Say we could go where our dreams were realized. We'll make a little sacrifice. It's a secret, hallelujah. Paradise with all its hidden sides. I still question it sometimes. I just want to see it clearer. When it feels like there's nowhere to run, run, run. There's nowhere to hide from the hurtful divide in this world. There's nowhere to run, 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 run away. I've been dreaming again about the revolution in my head. I've been dreaming again. I've been dreaming again about the revolution in my head. I've been dreaming again. On this road, your beliefs can fade away. I'm only offering what I made. I just hope we find it sooner. Not alone, we've all felt out of place. Just a shade in the human race. And I can look right through ya. When it feels like there's nowhere to run, run, run. There's nowhere to hide from the hurtful divide in this world. There's nowhere to run, 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 run away. I've been dreaming again about the revolution in my head. I've been dreaming again. I've been dreaming again about the revolution in my head. I've been dreaming again. I've been dreaming again about the revolution in my head. I've been dreaming again. Way-oh, way-oh, way-oh. I've been dreaming again about the revolution in my head. I've been dreaming again. Way-oh, way-oh, way-oh. I've been dreaming again about the revolution in my head. I've been dreaming again. I've been dreaming again about the revolution in my head. I've been dreaming again.
Water, of course, is health. Water is safety. Water means opportunity. It means dignity. It means a whole lot more. And the big question that we're hoping to answer today is, how do we preserve this very precious resource? How do we partner, whether it's government, ourselves as individuals, civil society, all organizations? How do we partner to ensure that we preserve this very important and precious resource? This is an extremely unique event. With all that we have lived, it is beautiful for us to be able to gather, whether it is those who are here or those who are joining us online, with all that we have lived across the world with the COVID pandemic. What is important is an opportunity to gather, to celebrate, and to discuss how we can partner to preserve this precious resource. The event this evening and today, of course, includes a range of different parts of what we have to offer. We've got a panel of global water leaders. We've got the premiere of the Brave Blue World film, special guest from South Sudan, as well as a musical performance by one of South Africa's finest. A couple of house rules for those who are on site with us. We've got a couple of toilets that you can see on either side of where you are gathered. Please make sure that whatever you do when you step out of your vehicle, you make sure that you put on your mask and also you keep your social distancing. Those who are joining us online, I'm sure you know where your toilet will be. The hashtag for this event, it is hashtag W12 Drive-In. Please make sure that you use it. And when you do tweet, please make sure that you tweet at W12_programs. I'd like to just take a moment and thank the partners who have made this event possible. Thank you very much to Nedbank CIB, DuPont Water Solutions, Xylem, Grundfos, UNESCO, the International Finance Corporation, the World Bank, and the International Water Bank. Much appreciated for all of you who have made sure that we have this event. You might ask yourself, what is W12 Plus? Well, it's very much a movement, and I have had the opportunity to meet the team, incredible people who are dedicated to ensure that we do preserve this precious resource. What they do is they connect, they catalyze, they incubate urban water solutions, and they've got a number of programs such as W12 Plus Protocol, W12 Hubs, W12 Plus Exchanges. They've got W12 Drive-In, which is the event that we are all attending, whether on-site or online. The event, of course, it is unique. It's very much a hybrid of in-person events using the drive-in format. In kicking off the program, I'd like to welcome to the stage, on behalf of the City of Cape Town, to welcome all of you who are here and those who are joining us from South Africa and across the world. Alderman Clive Justice is the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee for Water and Waste in the City of Cape Town.
A very warm welcome to Cape Town, both to our international and our local audience. A warm welcome, and may we all rise and toast a glass of water to this wonderful initiative organized here this afternoon. A new normal, a new way of doing things. And so to Rene and his team, which are too many to mention, I'd say thank you for coming and choosing Cape Town to have this W12 Plus world premiere of the first socially distanced showcase for a Waterwise Future for all. Cape Town has a long history of water stress, as it is situated in a semi-arid region of southern Africa. Fortunately, this year the Western Cape has received above average winter rains. The continuous water-wise use of resource by all its consumers has helped alleviate the city's drought stress and replenish the dams to their former glory. Cape Town's reservoirs has topped out at 100% for the first time in 6 years, a magnificent change in the mother city compared to its dire state just 2 years ago. In 2018, Cape Town was on the precipice of becoming the world's first major metropolitan area to run out of water, prompting what officials refer to as Day Zero. A combination of strict water rationing, infrastructure changes, and above average water rationing and water rainfall has made those memories a thing of the past. In the city of Cape Town, water usage went from 1.2 billion litres per day to less than 500 million litres per day at the peak. Currently, the consumers in Cape Town use about 700 litres per day, meaning that the behavioural change has taken root, and Cape Town, and its citizens are on the right way of not facing that awful day zero again. The per capita water consumption currently is 132 litres, whereas the National Water and Sanitation Master Plan advises that metropolitan areas, people can consume 260 litres per person per day. Day zero taught Cape Townians to be frugal with water usage and how water truly is a life source. Cape Townians rallied together to ration water like never before, changing its societal relationship with water. Notwithstanding the current high dam levels, water savings remains a priority. Climate change studies indicates that extreme droughts are likely to become more frequent and longer in duration. Therefore, the implementation of Cape Town's water strategy and new water program remains an important focus, with the city reaching key milestones in the extraction of groundwater, piloting of water reuse technology, and clearing of alien vegetation in catchment areas. The goal being to make Cape Town resilient to future droughts by building 300 megalitres per day capacity, and to transform our relationship with water by becoming a water-sensitive city. The city's projections indicates that its anticipated usage patterns, the full dams, and the behavioral change has in fact contributed to sustainability in water for our city. The city water costs is approximately 4 cents per litre on average. However, because of our step tariffs, it can range from 1.7 cents a litre to 6 cents a litre. Now that compares to bottled water that you would buy in the shop at 10 rand a litre. Just because it's cheap, we should never fall into the trap of wasting water. And so my message to all water consumers, both locally and internationally, is use water wisely by saving water whilst we have it. Every drop counts. May I add my congratulations to the organizers and hope that this conference will not only be unique in the structure, but also in its outcomes. I thank you.
We are in Cape Town. We are in the province called the Western Cape, and we do have a message from the Premier of the Western Cape, Premier Alan Winde.
Hello, this is Alan Winde, Premier of the Western Cape, and I'm coming to you digitally because unfortunately I cannot be there this evening to share this evening with you. I think I love innovation, and I think that what's being organized, the W12 drive-in experience, is just innovation at its best, and really I want you to enjoy it. The message is amazing, and of course the ability to bring people together in this format safely while we are growing our economy after the wave or flattening the curve of COVID-19 in this province is amazing. Thank you very much to the organizers for putting this together, and really enjoy your evening.
To the Premier. As mentioned, one of the partners to this event is Corporate and Investment Banking, or Nedbank CIB. Nedbank CIB, of course, a division of Nedbank, which is a leading African bank that provides global markets, transactional, corporate, and investment banking services. I personally, historically, have always known Nedbank to be aligned to the environment, the protection of the environment, And the amount of work that Nedbank has done, its collaborations and partnerships for global water security, particularly on the African continent, are evidence of this commitment. And to speak on behalf of Nedbank CIB, we are honored to welcome Malebo Mutibe, who's a divisional executive for Nedbank CIB client coverage. She began her career in banking at one of the big four banks as a graduate trainee before moving on to brief client coverage role. She proceeded at some point to join the structures finance team of leading investment banks, and in this role as a transactor, Malebo gained experience in providing debt solutions to clients in the aviation, private equity, public and private sector clients. She has been part of the Nedbank client coverage team for more than 8 years. And of course, she carries the Nedbank flag in ensuring that the partnership that they have with a number of organizations across the continent in preserving the environment continues. If you could please welcome Malebo.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to be here representing Nedbank Group as the premier sponsor of this important event, and to welcome you all and express our gratitude to you for your willingness and desire to be a part of the all-important global water solutions needed for our country, continent, and planet. The chief executive of Nedbank Group, Mark Brown, perfectly summed up for me mankind's relationship with water in a single sentence. He said, "We simply can't have a world without water." It's an expression of hope and determination, but it's also a plain and simple truth. Clinical, if you like. Without clean, fresh, accessible water, we will not have a world, which is why events like this that serve to focus our collective attention on finding viable, workable, collaborative solutions to the many varied water crises facing our planet are so absolutely essential. It's no secret that environmental risks are persistently counted among the top global risks that have been identified by the World Economic Forum, both in terms of the likelihood that these risks will be realized and their immense potential impact. Water crises are at or near the top of this list of environmental risks. And the obvious interconnection between water availability and human well-being, and indeed survival, means that the water challenges our world faces now present increasing systemic challenges that must be addressed by communities, corporations, and governments. Who will ever forget Western Cape's brush with Day Zero? And while South Africa has subsequently enjoyed relatively good rains over many areas, there are still ongoing extreme water shortages and devastating droughts being experienced in many other parts of the country, all of which serve to emphasize just how completely reliant we are on the environment for economic prosperity and social stability, and the massive extent to which any natural ecosystem failure puts the well-being of our people and communities at risk. The interrelationship was reinforced at the 2018 WWF Living Water Report 2, which states that the impacts of climate inaction globally are still becoming increasingly apparent. In fact, according to the report, many species of plants and animals have experienced declines of up to 60% since 1970. If we as South Africans, and indeed global citizens, are serious about meeting our shared aspirations of social and economic development and contributing to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 6, it is time for us to urgently prioritize the effective use, management, protection, and optimization of our countries and planet's already very scarce water resources. Achieving that requires healthy, well-functioning ecosystems, of which humans are an integral part. In South Africa, this dire need for us to work together to secure and protect our water ecosystems is particularly acute, as evidenced in research by WWF SA and the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, which found that 10% of South Africa's total land area delivers approximately 50% of the country's water flow, into life-giving rivers. This fact, coupled with the reality that South Africa is also one of the driest countries in the world in terms of annual rainfall, mean that solving our water crises is not as straightforward as building more dams or canals. Our only hope is to diligently protect what water we have, rally people and industry to use less water, and conduct themselves in ways that place less strain on water resources, and to develop clear and viable action plans that enable us to work together to create the water-secure future that is so crucial for our continued existence on Earth. As a sustainability-focused bank with a stated purpose to use our financial expertise to do good, Nedbank has a long history of environmental concern, activism, and investment. Many of the countries in which we operate, including South Africa, are faced with severe water scarcity challenges, typically exacerbated by poor water quality and aging or inadequate wastewater infrastructure that cannot cope with the growing needs of increasing urbanized populations. We are acutely aware of the dire need to act quickly, decisively, and collaboratively to help ensure a water-secure future for our country and continent, and all its people. And we take this responsibility very seriously, seeking to deliver on it in various ways, including acting as a catalyst and facilitator of effective water partnerships and investments. To this end, in addition to our investment of many millions of rand into water security projects and initiatives, we have partnered with numerous like-minded organizations to maximize the positive impact and outcomes we can have on our planet's water future. The release of the 2019 Water and Sanitation Master Plan by the Minister of the Department of Human Settlements, Water and Sanitation, Lindiwe Sisulu, was a much-needed step in the right direction for this country, as the plan will hopefully inform significant amendments to existing water laws and provide an essential framework to guide the combined efforts of all stakeholders. At the launch of the master plan, the minister publicly invited the private sector to play more of a role in driving water security, participating by partnering with government to expedite the rollout of vital water, public-private partnerships, and the so-called PPPs projects. It is our view at Nedbank that by linking the country's water resource strategy to an infrastructure development plan, similar to the very successful Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program, significant benefits and advancement will be unlocked. And to this end, effective public-private sector partnerships and collaboration are key to allowing government to act on its immediate priority to reform water legislation and coordination, while the private sector can bring its money and expertise to the table in order to fast-track urgent bulk water and sanitation projects. While the events of the first half of 2020 puts the brakes on these collaborative water security ambitions, Nedbank remains fully committed to building on the strong support of and partnerships with key water providers and other key stakeholders. Here are some of the examples of the ways in which we have given effect to our commitment to water stewardship and catalytic influence. The provision of a 500 million general banking facility to a leading water board, sustaining 50 to 60% of the country's GDP. Over 600 million in finance outstanding provided to a leading government implementation agent responsible for bulk water supply and inter-basin transfer projects. A further 2 billion term facility is being considered. Nedbank has hosted the inaugural meeting of the South African Water Chamber. We're a funder of 2 of South Africa's 3 water concessions. Nedbank's appointment as primary transactional banker for a number of water and sanitation-focused companies, including 2 prominent water boards and a municipal-owned sewage operator. A total of 160 million in finance granted for a secondary city municipalities infrastructure upgrade, including water reticulation and water treatment plants, as well as a new sewage system. Nedbank partnered with and financed the Cape Town Drought Response Learning Initiative and used the learnings of this initiative for a national event it sponsored for public and private stakeholders. Over the past 5 years, more than 93 million has been invested in 41 water and conservation type projects through the WWF Nedbank Green Trust, with 11 of those projects and an investment of nearly 23 million, particularly focused on water, fresh and marine. We funded a water desalination plant in Ghana. In addition, Nedbank continues to participate in various government and industry water initiatives to encourage collaboration and learning. These engagements assist in the amelioration of the sector's challenges and improve the country's prospects of a water-secure future. Ladies and gentlemen, it is somewhat serendipitous that thanks to the social distancing requirements created by COVID, this 2020 W12 Plus event is taking place in this unique format. I believe it serves as a strong reminder to us all that approaching water security in the same way as we have in the past will not deliver the results we urgently need. Together, we need to look at water through a fresh lens, in a highly integrated manner, and in a way that brings together all the ecosystems that make up our modern society. Water is not the responsibility of government, industry, agriculture, or society. It is the combined responsibility of all these sectors that make up our society, and that all depend equally on this precious resource. We cannot wait for the next global crisis to join forces and take decisive action. That crisis is already upon us. Now is the time for us to take urgent and decisive action together. And it is my hope and that of Nedbank CIB that today's conference serves as the next firm stepping stone towards that impactful collaborative response. Thank you.
When I see the living things and the non-living things, I saw that they need each other. If you take away the living things from non-living things, the whole ecosystem will collapse.
We are standing in a really important place. Up to 60% of our freshwater consumption in South Africa is provided by less than 10% of our land surface, and it's generally places like these mountains. So these very special areas are under threat from a lot of different degrading drivers. People often blame erosion, cattle, development, leaving a footprint that is not a water absorber, it's a water user.
Okay, we are in Mzimvubu catchment, which has got 6 traditional authorities. Our main objective here is to see our land recover from being infested by water.
We have been removing water trees for almost a year now. As we are doing our work, there are changes because what they're doing is that they're destroying wetlands.
If you respect the ecosystem, we can benefit from the land. My passion is to go to the farmers, to tell them, to educate them the importance of the land and the animals, that they work together.
We must use what nature gives us. I thought maybe if the land is eroded, it's the end, but you can get it back. The best way is to rest the areas where you have grazed with the healthy land. You get healthy animals. With the healthy animals, you make profit. So everyone is happy.
I think we've made huge progress in the catchment here, and the partnership has really facilitated that.
It is important for us to form the grazing association so that there will be the platform to communicate with the sellers that are living in the rural area. The healthy, the grassland, the better price for the sellers. That is why today we are here, because of the healthy grassland.
Without those links, these livestock owners wouldn't be able to unlock the potential of the cattle as a livelihood option. So making those connections and creating this network is where the value is.
There's something happening in this landscape, and it's because of people coming together. People working together with a common vision for restoring the ecological functions which underpin people's lives. It's about landscapes and livelihoods, people and nature working together. Water, soil, grasslands. We can build anything on that.
We've got 4.2 billion people who live in cities across the world. Of those, 844 million lack access to safe drinking water. And we are here, as I mentioned earlier, to find solutions to this. Find the solutions through collaboration, find solutions through partnership. 1.8 billion people use a source of drinking water contaminated with feces. That is a reality that a number of us can never imagine, but it's real. This cannot continue. As a father, one of the statistics that left me disturbed is to find out that every 90 seconds, a child under the age of 5 dies from lack of access to clean water and sanitation. The question of water, the preservation of this resource, and understanding where the challenges are, is very much a complex issue. And it is those complexities that we are going to showcase during this event. With the numbers that I've shared, what do they actually mean beyond the numbers? I was saying to Rene of W12 earlier that for me, when it comes to such subject matters, it is the human story that I'm interested in. Which is why the special guest for this evening, who's going to explain to us his journey, is very much a showcase of not only a challenge that one can experience, a challenge that a community can experience, but how that can be overcome. I want to take a moment and tell you a brief story about this man, Salva Dut, who was born in a rural village in southwestern Sudan from the Dinka people. At 11 years old, as the Sudanese civil war was approaching, he was forced to flee together with a number of people from his village. He joined thousands of boys who were famously known as the Lost Boys on their journey by foot to seek safety in refugee camps. He ended up in Ethiopia, he ended up in Kenya, and then he had an opportunity to move to the US, where he was embraced and taken in by a family in Rochester in New York. Years later, Salva found out that his father is still alive back home in South Sudan. But unfortunately, his father was suffering from a disease born from water parasites. And he decided that he's going to do something about it. He was inspired by that story to ensure that where he comes from, there is access to clean water. And that was the beginning of water for South Sudan. Ladies and gentlemen, those who are here in Cape Town and those who are joining us from across the world, if you could please welcome Salva Dut.
Take this mess out now because I'm alone by myself. Thank you very much, Renee and Shelley, and the entire team of W12 Plus. Sorry, thank you. Thank you for that. So let me start over again. Good. So, okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Good job. Thank you, Renee and Shelley and the entire team of W12 Plus for bringing me here. Cape Town or South Africa is a beautiful country to be in. This is my first time here in South Africa. We in Africa here, we think South Africa is the first leading country in Africa. But was shame one time when we got a news back, sometime back, saying that Cape Town ran out of water supply. What would happen to a small country or to the baby country called South Sudan? We will not have any water. Precious water. If we don't take care of this precious water we have in this world, we will not be existing in this world we have today. Do you guys know that the water is going to be a global security threat sooner? I'm sure most of you know that Ethiopia and Egypt are even closer to fight right now because of water. This is a big threat, and we should pay attention to that. I never dream about working for water, but right now I'm 100% working for water. When I was young, I never thought that I would be doing something with water. And where I grew up, there were big challenges for the water in South Sudan. I have to take cows and goats and calves far, far, far away to get the water for this animal to drink. And my sister have to walk miles and miles collecting the water for household use. Imagine that. And when I was 11 years old, the war came in, and I had to walk to a refugee camp in Ethiopia, carrying my little tiny gourd of water. That's how I crossed the desert to get to where I need to be safe. Unfortunately, the uncle that I was with was killed in front of me, but I never gave up. I went to a refugee camp and have a terrible life where the UN has to bring, can you hear me? Okay, when the UN has to bring the water to our camp to get the supply of water. And it was very difficult. I stayed there in the refugee camp for 10 years before I went to US. And I didn't know where my parents were all this time. In US, I get spoiled, of course. You get water everywhere running in your house. You run to the tap, sit in the shower for a long time, brush your teeth while the water is running. And I forget the hardship that I've been in it because of the life I had in US. Luckily, I heard that my father was still alive, but he was sick because he was drinking bad water and has parasite. Dang, that's where my head clicked. This is a time now for me to go back and help my people. I went back to South Sudan, used to be Sudan at that time, with no infrastructure completely. And to do work there is very challenging, but it pays back. When you had that well, it's been put down there, you can see the entire community sit around that well, and they start developing, and they thrive, they prosper. A school is coming in, clinic is coming in, and things are happening in their community just because of that water. That means water put a stability in that community. But the challenge remains. How you sustain that water really? To make sure this water stays there for a long, long, long time. It's a big question for all of us. What could we do to make sure our only 2% fresh water in this world is be sustainable and not us not be fooled by this ocean water, which is salty. Now Water for South Sudan came up with an idea to have something called water microfinance to be put around those wells to make sure they set up a system, a little banking system, to make sure that they will sustain their well because they have no other source of getting well. And this is very important. If we don't do that, who will come somewhere in this world to come and fix it for us? We have so many people that are being spoiled, polluting our water. And we are doing bad things to water. And we should pay attention to such a thing. But if we say that, okay, this water is just free, anyone will do whatever they want to do with it, then we ruin our precious resource that make us exist in this world. And we need to really pay attention to this and making sure all of us stand together and make it work for all of us. Look, in our community, we are still in a very low stage. But already we came up with that system to make sure these people grow with it. With that water microfinance, to make sure that you don't take water for granted. You have to do something to make sure that this water is be sustained. And that's where we are leading now. But we cannot do it alone. All the things that we've been doing, people donate money for Water for South Sudan to be able to build the wells. And the next step is to show them how they can sustain it. And this is very, very, very important for all of us to make sure that we are sustaining our well, our water. If we don't do that, there would be no life in this world. And thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Salva. Really, really appreciate you taking the time to be here and also telling your story. It is Salva's story, Salva's journey that represents what is possible and why we are here. I'd like to remind you just once again, whether you are with us here in Cape Town or you are following the events online, remember the hashtag is W12 Drive-In. Also, please tag at W12_programs. I mentioned earlier the importance of water, water being an opportunity, water being the future, water being well-being. And Salva's story, of course, as mentioned, very much draws that line in the sand. There are certain issues that need to be resolved, and it is through gatherings such as these, discussions that we have, collaborations that we have the opportunity to form a part of that can bring a solution to some of these challenges. And it is within that context that I want to introduce what I mentioned earlier, one of two panel discussions that we will be having. This panel discussion delves into the complexity of meeting the need so poignantly described by Salva. The discussion itself is going to be led by Philip Clayton, who is our moderator. From the US, Philip is the president of the Institute for Ecological Civilization, EcoVid, one of the organizing partners behind W12+, along with Cape Town-based organization Save Our Schools, an NPO. If you could please welcome from the US and of course engage in the discussion itself, Philip Clayton.
We are honored to bring to you today 7 of the world's top water experts, whom I will introduce in just a moment. Yesterday, however, I had the chance to take a video tour of the space where you are all meeting now. It's amazingly beautiful. Those of us on the panel are looking at it now on our video screens. We see the mountain in front of you, the ocean behind. We think actually you're trying to compete with Andrea Bocelli's album, which is set in the Italian village of Portofino. So maybe to this evening, instead of love in Portofino, we have love in Cape Town. Welcome also to the hundreds of guests who are joining us live from cities around the world. Just as Cape Town was in the lead with citizen leadership in the water crisis a few years ago, you are again in the lead in hosting this innovative global conference. With me today are 7 of the most authoritative water experts in the world. The panel you're about to hear builds directly off of the comments that Salva has just shared with this global audience. Salva emphasizes the centrality of water and the importance of water for healthy human community. He tells us and reminds us that when the water access is present, when clean, clear water for drinking, cooking, and sanitation is available, communities thrive. And that communities can play a central role in assuring that type of water access, that type of collaboration, which is crucial. We hope in this panel to show you also the collaboration among some of the leading institutions in the world. We bring to you then, in the panel which is now about to make their opening statements, the combination of a W12 blueprint, global expertise and perspective, solutions-oriented thinking, the joining together across sectors, and the role of local communities in taking leadership to ensure a water secure future. Allow me then to introduce the panelists one by one and to invite them to make their opening 2-minute statement. Kimberly Kupiecki, Global Leader, Sustainability Advocacy and Communications for DuPont Water Solutions. Kimberly.
Thank you, Philip, and welcome. Thanks, everyone. So great question. At DuPont Water Solutions, my team is optimistic about the future of urban water because a secure urban water future also is an optimized one. So in our teams, we talk about this concept of a water optimized world. And I think that fits right into security and all the themes we've been hearing so far. So what does that look like if we think about the vision? So what it means is the 7.8+ billion of us all have access to safe and clean water for our personal needs and our community needs. It means that industry has enough water to make the goods and provide the services that we all need and rely on. And also it's a world where we don't think of wastewater as a waste anymore. We think of it as a resource stream that includes clean water, it includes energy source, and also potentially materials as well. And so how do we create this future? Well, we think about the 5 A's. The first A is this idea of abundance, which is really a contrast to this scarcity that we all feel, but it comes through ingenuity. How can we make 50 liters feel like 500? And I think you've seen this community here in Cape Town basically do that. We all need to learn from you all. Also, this idea of access. How do we make water accessible? we live on a blue planet. There's water all around, but so much of it isn't in the shape that we need it to be to use it. So how do we bring technology in those solutions to create water that's something that we can truly access? How can water be affordable for everyone? I mean, if you look at some costs of water treatment, they've gone down precipitously. I mean, we break records almost every month for desal right now, similar to what we saw in the solar space and energy. So there is a big cost reduction, and also wastewater is a fairly low cost resource to treat. And then, how do we make water adaptable? We over-treat it sometimes, and we take drinking water in some places in the world and flush it down the toilet literally. And then in other places, we pollute the sources so that the water is truly undertreated. So how do we kind of balance that out? Yes, Philip?
Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Please allow me to introduce Henk Ovink, Special Envoy for International Water Affairs, Kingdom of the Netherlands.
Thank you, Philip. It's good to be on the panel, and it's great to see you all. My kickoff is, of course, on the issues of where do we spend our dollars? Because water is connected to everything. In places already plagued by war, climate change, and poverty, the current pandemic is the breaking point. It not only exposes how complex and interconnected our challenges are, it also reveals transcending solutions. Investing in water, sanitation, and hygiene is then the first line of defense and a first step towards a sustainable recovery. Never has the 6th UN Sustainable Development Goal been more vital for saving and protecting lives. But to deliver on our promise of the SDGs, we need a collective commitment. We need continuity in our programs and consistency of our ambitions, and we lack those. For the Netherlands, water matters because it strengthens the future health and economic sustainability of all, ensuring we leave no one behind. The Netherlands consistently commits to contributing our experience and understanding of water management to global. And now we have the responsibility to translate the exposed vulnerabilities from this crisis into positive action. Together, we must take a step forward and invest in water capacity, in its management and infrastructure, being it blue, green, and gray. Time to invest in integrated, inclusive, and sustainable water programs and projects. Doing so pays off. But so far, we have failed to seize this opportunity. Investing in water has a trickle-down effect across all the SDGs. But we continue to invest in infrastructure projects from the past, taken from the shelves to fill economic short-term stimulus packages focused on jobs for the economic recovery now, but not for a sustainable future. These projects offer no added value for integration, inclusion, or sustainability. The full 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development should lead the way for recovery. While we have great inspiring examples, we lack a steady flow of those investments. If we continue to replicate the past, we'll end up more vulnerable, more unequal, and more fragile than before. So let's build a robust blue and green pipeline of sustainable and transformative investment opportunities now and start to deliver on the promises we made.
Thank you, Henk. Fadi Komer, the chairman of the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program of UNESCO. Fadi, thank you for joining us. Please unmute with your unmute button.
Thank you, Philip. Good evening, everybody. As chair of AHP UNESCO, my objective is to expand the concept of water culture as much as I can, to cultivate peace in the world, and especially in the MENA region, and give the cooperation approach a serious boost in order to cope with global changes and climate change. Also, to deploy efforts setting up an environment that promotes technical projects along with good regulation in order to secure the future generation with water and with the nexus. There is 4 major challenges that I'm working on actually. The first one is to apply integrated water resource management as much as I can by also enhancing sustainable technical water projects. The second one is to apply good governance between nations and government and expand water education. The third one is how to shake hands with the private sector and the donors in order to help emerging countries satisfying their need by the project without forgetting the unprivileged social classes. And finally, the last challenge is how to apply hydrodiplomacy in order to achieve peace between nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Fadi. Next, Rochi Kemka, Global Partnerships Coordinator, 2030 Water Resources Group of the World Bank. Thanks for joining us, Rochi.
Thank you for having me. So for us, a water-secure world is one that supports economic growth, healthy ecosystems, and life itself. And addressing the global water challenge, in my view, is going to take a five-pronged approach. The first is really engaging in collective action and having sort of a neutral stakeholder engagement process that brings all the stakeholders together. This is with the recognition that no single stakeholder is going to be able to solve the challenge or the problem alone. The second is arming these stakeholders with the right evidence, the science, to be able to take strong decisions, which bring in hydrological parameters, but equally social and economic aspects. And with the science on the table, the third aspect is really to create an ecosystem for innovation. How do we create the right incentives, governance improvements, regulation that drives an ecosystem of thriving innovation? I think the fourth is creating a vision at scale, which brings stakeholders around a common objective. So having that common framework for action is critical. And then lastly, which a couple of my fellow panelists touched upon, we need to shift our thinking from linear approaches more to circular approaches, because waste is a resource, especially with the constraints that we're facing. So if I were to sum up, I think we need to think about both the hardware and the software that we require in driving for solutions in the current context. We all know the challenge, and we need to invest in what I call the 4 I's: infrastructure, institutions, innovation, and information. So some of these are concrete elements of solutions that need to go on the ground, and others are elements of how we bring people together, because that's how we're going to sustain economic growth and the planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochi. It's my pleasure to introduce Rashad Shawa, the chairman of the International Water Bank. Rashad, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone. I would like just to add on this thing, because each country has its own nature of dealing with the water problem. And the real assessment, the most important, that each country has to bring the data needed, for a central collective body who can really organize and who can match and make the work between these countries into the water sector. Meaning, so what we do have today is really to get the governments and the private sector and world organizations, civil societies, and everybody involved into getting this action onto the move. And the problem, I mean, as we say, even into the ecological point, we have a lot of runoffs rivers. If we take just 10% with no impact at all in the ecological life, that can solve a lot of problems around the world. It's one of the solutions that we really target. And today, water is, for the next nexus, it's something that we have to really make for everybody. I wrote an article a few years back and saying that water will be a commodity in the future. And this is actually what we're seeing now in Wall Street lately, that it is coming in the pipeline. But how much we're gonna, put the price for the water as a basic, and it should not be taken as a way of monopolizing what is happening in the world, rather than to actually be a moderate if there was a transboundary movement for the water sector. So at the end of the day, we have a lot of innovations, a lot of solutions, and I always stated it, that people behavior and culture has to change. They have to value the water, and governments have to really lend their support to these initiatives.
Thank you, Rashad. Thank you for that message. We turn now to Joe Vasey, Senior Vice President and CMO of Xylem Incorporated. Welcome, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. It's great to be here and great to be broadcasting so far away. I'm in the East Coast in the United States, so welcome Cape Town and others who are calling in. We're very optimistic when it comes to global water and water's future in an urban environment, but there's a lot of work to do. We're a company that is solving some of the world's toughest water challenges, many around an urban perspective. Now, we believe when we do this, we need to create both economic and social value. We see that these things are interlinked and highly related. And as we do that work, that's the mindset we have. And we create economic and social value for all stakeholders. There's no one answer when it comes to water, that's for sure. Now, the problems that we solve really are wrapped around resilience, scarcity, and working in an affordable way. So resilience is just getting after the right infrastructure, either new infrastructure or repairing infrastructure. And scarcity is around supplying water and having a good, reliant on water and water sources and diversification strategies. And affordability is a big deal. We need to bring water to everyone, and that means we've got to really work on the affordability piece. So those are the pieces that we're focused on, and we're glad to be here.
Thank you, Joe. And now from South Africa, it's my pleasure to introduce Catherine Candice Kaufman, Head of Nedbank CIB Infrastructure, Water, and Telecommunications Finance. Thanks for being here, Catherine.
Thank you very much. I fortunately can only speak from a funder's perspective. I will not attempt to provide a technical view. That would be a huge mistake. So from my experience and my observation and what we should prioritize to ensure future water security for towns and cities is based on how we funded projects on the continent and emerging markets and also back home. It's very clear we should prioritize firstly the mundane things, such as consumer education in water conservation, making sure consumers truly understand the cost of water from source to tap. And in doing so, consumers get to know the value of water and how they should use it, and the cost and the impact of wastage and what that does to water security. And on the topic of consumers, it might be business as usual for many countries across the world, but in some jurisdictions, it still requires a bit of a mental shift that you can take wastewater and treat it into portable blue drop drinking safe water. And doing that, I think many of our speakers have said this before, you create abundance in the system already. The second really important focus for me would be if we had to take a very holistic and integrated approach to managing water and water infrastructure, both from a policy and regulatory perspective, creating certainty for investors and water stakeholders along the value chain, but also in terms of water infrastructure management. Making sure we've got variety and diversity of supply, knowing when to use diesel as peak water supply, bringing in ecology and conservation in other areas. And also, of course, just starting with construction codes for water management and introducing that into how you construct infrastructure for water resource management. So my utopia is somewhere between consumer education and an holistic approach to water management.
Thank you, Catherine. And now, by the amazing technology available to us, we're going to share with you a discussion between 7 leading water experts, as if they were sitting on the stage in front of you now. For the next question, I'd like to invite Fadi to begin our conversation and to have Hank as the close. And let's see if the others can weigh in on this following question. Can you please paint a picture of the future of urban water security that you are involved in working toward? So what does a water secure world look like from your perspective? Can you describe what sectors need to be involved, what solutions are central, and what key factors will enable this security? Fadi, would you launch the discussion for us?
Thank you so much, Philip. Very nice question. As we all know, from the dawn of time, most human activities relied on water and the nexus of water, food, and ecosystem security as a vital element that are really inseparable from any form of life. So the world will not be able to meet sustainable development and great positive changes without improving the way that we are managing our water resources and the nexus. Unfortunately, we can say that the world is becoming predominantly urban, with more than half of the worldwide population living in big cities. And this is why at UNESCO PHE, we are every year, IHP, we are every year organizing a very big gathering about megacity. Imagine that 4.2 billion of people lives now in urban areas. And that means we are living in an unsecure water world. We are pushing actually our water resources to the limit with the global changes as the population growth, unsustainable economic development, climate change, pandemic as COVID-19, forest fire, pollution, and pressures of all kinds. All these pressures and risks will increase water demand, changes the pattern flows of rivers and aquifers, and increase the frequency of flood, of drought, and also unexpected events. This is why we can say actually that the studies has shown that 11% of the world population, 11%, that means about 800 million persons are living without any access to an improved water supply. And also 1.8 billion person lives without access to adequate sanitary systems. This is why I can say that urban water security is a complex and cross-cutting challenge that need to be addressed holistically in order to achieve SDG 6. This include to make strategic planning, Philip, strategic planning and integrated adaptation plan also for us to overcome these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Fadi, for that opening statement. Catherine and Joe, could I invite you into the discussion? Anything that you'd want to add to what Fadi just said?
Sure, I can. I have a brief add. I mean, what I love to see in the future, we live in a very this industry tends to be very conservative for the right reason. But I have a lot of hope that in the future, the adoption of digital technologies, which really can create a ton of value, not only delivering great services for citizens, but at much reduced price. So I think adopting digital technologies actually is a way of getting after the affordability issue, which we have to do. So in the future, I hope to see a lot of different newer technologies being adopted and used around the world. And Catherine?
Thank you. I would echo what Joe is saying. I think what's also important is to have that flexibility of looking at a robust management system, of having both a national programmatic view on how to solve problems, but as well as bringing in technologies from other areas, tapping into renewable energy, as well as battery systems and other technologies in order to take care of probably the most expensive cost on our water treatment plants.
Thank you. Kimberly and Rashad, when you weigh in on this topic, what thoughts do you have?
Yeah, thanks, Philip. So a lot of the folks have mentioned when we think about water security, where do we go? So I think, it's that, and it's also kind of what gives me hope is this collaboration that we're seeing. And also there's these disciplines that are coming together. So if you think about, we've had, and Joe, you mentioned the conservatism, and I agree, we need to get out of our risk-averse nature so that we can bring different ideas together. So whether they're multidisciplinary, bringing together biology, physics, digitals will be huge. all those things coming together to create that accessible, affordable water, and also the flexibility of options, I think is key. Thank you.
Rashad?
Well, I second what Dr. Fadi have said and Joe and earlier. We do have a serious problem, and I'm always calling for hands-on and implementation of solutions that can be adapted by governments and by the private sector, just allowing them to proceed for this solution. Because in theory, we have a lot of solutions, but how can we implement them, and how seriously we can do this thing as a hands-on? Because we can sit here forever. And this is always, I take the shortcut. I said, let's stop all of this. We all know the problem. I mean, our esteemed panelists here, they are all world authority on water. And the problem, we face a wall, and we have to break that wall, which is blocking us from really implementing what all of us have in our minds. I suffered personally from it, dealing on a strategic international water project to try to introduce it for my own country. Unfortunately, it wasn't preserved. This is what led me to go internationally. Well, I got all the support that was lended to me in making the International Water Bank a reality, which is taking place at the moment. It's officially and formally under incorporation in the Netherlands. And this is something that I can say in regard to this point.
Thank you, Rashad. Thank you for making that announcement to this live audience in Cape Town, that the International Water Bank is now a reality, a formal existence. Rochi, with your experience with the World Bank, how would you address this question?
So I think a lot of the panelists have touched upon the multi-sectoral, cross-sectoral nature of water. I think through our own work, when we think about water, it's not just about SDG 6. There are, by a conservative estimate, at least 13 other SDGs that are impacted by working on water. So when we think about who we need to bring around the table to solve water challenges, it's the urban sector, but it's equally, water resources, agriculture, industries, planning, environment, also finance. So I think it's not about cherry picking who needs to be around the table. Water is too big an issue for us to just leave to a few people to solve. And I think it requires a systems rethink on how water resources are managed, thinking right from source sustainability to how water is distributed and transmitted, water use efficiency, so demand side management of water, all the way to sort of circular economy solutions. How can we think about closed loop solutions and making the most of the resource that we have? And I think sort of incremental small changes are not going to get us there. We need to have a reimagining of the entire system itself. And I'm hopeful because of the increasing awareness and engagement on water that we're on the path to getting there. But I encourage everybody to join along. Thanks.
Thank you, Rochi. Hank, can you draw together this first discussion, and we'll launch a new topic after your brief closing?
I will try. Rich discussion, of course, coming from all parts. But I'd like to add at least one critical aspect, which some of you already touched upon. But there is, next to a clear focus on solutions that are catalytic, transformative, that we can bring to scale and replicate, there is a need to focus on the enabling environment, to focus on people and institutions, to secure that we not only come up with best solutions, but that there is ownership in communities, from governments, in businesses, and that they carry through not only developing and implementing and financing them, but there's also maintenance and operations, that there is a life cycle approach. So next to investing the trillions in projects, we have to invest the millions in people. I think that is a critical part to make sure that that is happening. The second is where you get the inspiration from, where it comes together. And you already started, this is this urban context, where we can really mitigate the risks but also create a lot of added value by investing in water, investing in nature-based solutions, caring for the water and really valuing it. And that means a systems approach on the scale of a city, a community aspects and including all stakeholders very inclusively, and working on innovative concepts, small and big, because I agree with Rochi, scale matters, but sometimes you have to start in a certain place, smaller, with this capacity to replicate and scale this up. And then last, mitigating our challenges, reducing risks, also really has the opportunity to leapfrog towards the future. Don't replicate the past, don't respond to past disasters, but look proactively to these SDGs, these future opportunities. And what happens then is that it's not only that you reduce risks, you create added value with better health, healthy environment, an aquifer that is sound, divest from fossil fuel and fossil fuel opportunities, and create environments that are water secure. So lots of opportunities next to solutions, also focusing on the people and their institutions.
Thank you, Henk. We want to focus on a question that's very important to South Africans. So let me ask Catherine to start this very brief discussion, Rochi to end, and leave an open space between them for comments by any other panelists who would like to speak to this topic. The topic is this: water is simultaneously a resource and a vital human right. Water is central to human dignity, to ecological stability, economic prosperity, and cultural flourishing. In effect, water is well-being. How, in your view, Catherine, can we balance the need to increase financing in the water industry with a rights-based approach to water? You're muted. Unmute, please. Thank you.
My apologies. I think it's a very important question you're asking and very relevant to South Africa because we do have quite a divide between rich and poor. And so it's important to understand that we see water as a necessary human right for survival, but we also understand that water cannot entirely be free. Someone pays for it, even if it's not you, somebody else is paying for it. So how do we marry the two? I think for us, it's also, first of all, establishing the mindset that water need not be seen as a social burden, water service delivery. It's actually an economic enabler in itself. Just by putting in place water infrastructure, that in itself, the construction of that creates jobs. Putting in water services in a particular area increases its attractiveness for investment, which results in businesses being set up, jobs created, skills being created, taxes being paid from those jobs being created. But more importantly, I think for me, is that water must always be seen as a resource of use and not a resource of ownership. So I'm quite uncomfortable with the concept of privatization of water. And I need to reiterate, privatization is not the same as public-private partnerships. Privatization drives a different model of trying to make a return, trying to make sure that shareholders earn a particular return. Public-private partnership is a relationship between public sector and the private sector. The public sector has engaged private sector to deliver a public sector service. There is never ever a real ownership of that asset. That asset is in fact not treated in a privatized manner. So we need to dispel any political ideas or ideological ideas around public PPPs being privatization. So for me, the start would be to see it as an economic enabler.
Thank you, Catherine. Before Rochi closes, do 2 or 3 of the panelists want to speak to this briefly, to this crucial issue? Please just jump in. Go ahead. I saw Henk's hand first, and then Fadi's hand.
I just want to add the aspect of valuing water, because we look at water in a price perspective and the mix between resource and human right. Water also is a human responsibility. But with the high-level panel on water, we drafted 5 principles that we put in practice also in South Africa. And the first one is to recognize and embrace water's multiple values. So look across economic, cultural, social, environmental, political aspects. Second is to reconcile values and to build trust. So be inclusive, include all, transparent and equitable. Third is to protect our sources, our natural resources, including watersheds, rivers, aquifers, and so forth. Fourth, educate to empower, to promote education and awareness among youth, stakeholders, women especially. And five is indeed to invest and innovate, to ensure adequate investment in institutions. So by valuing water, you always take a broader perspective from the ground up.
Thank you very much. Fadi, please.
Philip, thank you. It's a very challenging question. From one point of view, I feel that the main hinges around is whether water is a human right, but how to ensure all human right to everybody and to have access to clean water and adequate sanitation. I feel that financing for water investment is under global changes pressure should be science-based and should be targeting each region concerning the climate and the specificities of each region. Financing project and meeting the human rights has to be built upon resilience and through making priorities of investments in adaptation with the countries that are facing increasing water scarcity. And this is the point where the private sector can invest through, for example, IWB. It's a very important opportunity that the donors which cannot finance the projects of emerging countries, the project of countries that are living with scarce resources, private banking can fulfill this task. This is very important task to fulfill through technical sustainable project, starting very small by building database centers, by enhancing and supporting governance, capacity building in those countries, and then pass by towards implementing technical project. Because if we win on the technical side and we use on the, we will lose everything. All the investment will be lost. So governance is the main issue for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fadi. Rochi, will you close this question and then let's move to our final question before our panel closes.
Thanks, Philip. Some interesting discussions and reflections by my fellow panelists. I don't necessarily see water and finance and the right to water being in conflict with each other. I think it's no surprise that there is an increasing finance gap in the water sector and an increasing water gap. I think the two are linked. I agree with what Henk was mentioning, that we need to have an understanding of what the value of water is, and then identify the right tools and instruments which integrate the full economic, social, and environmental value of that water. I think there is an opportunity to really understand the multiple uses and services that water provides. It's not just one. There's multiple ways that water is used across sectors, across people, across geographies, and that will allow us to then allocate water as well as finance to maximize well-being, because that's ultimately the goal when we think about a water secure world for all. It's really about maximizing the well-being of citizens and communities. So I think it's very much hand in glove, and to achieve that, we do need to build and strengthen institutions which are able to deliver services and which are financially sustainable. So if we have our values in place, we'll be able to get the right allocation and instruments to be able to solve the challenge. Thanks.
Thanks very much. For this final question, I'd like to ask Rashad to begin and to ask Fadi to close the conversation. And if everyone holds himself to about 1 minute, we have time for everyone to comment. We know the solutions to these challenges of water security exist. The finance is available, the technology exists, the need is great, and the opportunity for impact is tremendous. Can you please cite just one or at most two creative solutions that could take us toward urban water security? What, in your view, are the most urgent, tangible actions that will lead to a water-wise future for all? Rashad Chawai, would you begin?
As a matter of fact, government can facilitate or deprive this sector from developing, and especially in the urban areas where we look at it. The finance itself is very, very important. You see, the problem with the water industry globally lies into three things: mismanagement of water resources, lack of finance, and politics. These are the triangle for all the problem.
Rashad has frozen, so we're going to ask Joe or Kimberly to jump in with a comment. We lost him, we'll get him back in a moment. Joe or Kimberly?
I'll jump in, thanks, Phil. So I guess for us, we have some great examples of working with some communities, but we don't come in and just sell our products and systems on our own. It's such a collaborative partnership, and everybody has some stake and skin in the game. So in the Serdo region in Ethiopia, we worked with USAID, CARE Ethiopia, PureTech Israel, and were able to take a water source that they had that was distressed, they couldn't use. They were paying a ton of money for trucked water or walking miles to get to another impaired resource. And we're able to take that technology and basically put a mobile trailer on top of this borehole and just completely change the, kind of the dynamics of the community and the economics. So, we see these small examples, they're local, but I mean, the science is global, but you bring it in locally, but you do it with partnership. So I think, how do we accelerate that would be my question. I feel like my panelists might have some great ideas on that.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, I think getting after SDG 6, we have to focus on base of pyramid with those who aren't living with less than $3 a day around the definition of base of pyramid, and really make a difference there. And again, to serve this segment, it's been estimated maybe it's $120 billion between now and 2030. We always have the point of view on all of these numbers. We're not thinking through the best available technologies. We think these numbers tend to be way overstated. We've seen a lot of examples of massive economics are created for all kinds of stakeholders when we can think differently about the solutions that actually exist today. The last point is I'd say water.org actually has done a lot of quite good innovation here, where they used to philanthropically raise capital, and they essentially have raised investor capital and multiplied that through the debt markets to really get after this. And I think we applaud their efforts around that. We've worked with NGOs to essentially get their products into the marketplace through our commercial teams. So we're trying to essentially get this thing at scale to really get after making a big movement here. So a couple examples.
I think we have Rashad back. Rashad, could you please give us briefly your opening statement? We lost you for a few minutes.
Yes, thank you, Philip. The point is, for the finance, which is crucial to anything in life, including the water sector, if we today focus at, let's say, the financing of water, which is a main obstacle really that we have today for the development of the sector and the sustainable development. Let's put the perspective like this. You have two aspects. You have the commercial banks, and you have banks like the World Bank, African Development, Asian Development, whatever. We are like IWB today comes in between the development aspect and the return for investors. Banks should increase their lending portfolio, because if you go to banks, if they have a lending portfolio of 10%, most of it is going to electricity, oil and gas, and water is really minimal. And the same way for the other organizations, the World Organization, they have to increase their lending and finance and their support to the sector. I was discussing with some people, and I made an offer to tell them all the big institutions in the world and companies and investment banks and whatever, if they take 1% of their annual profits to be dedicated as their own choice where they want to allocate, we will solve a major problem in the water industry. And this is something that we need to do. And I come back to a very crucial point. which Hank addressed, the value of water. Unfortunately, people, they do not appreciate water, okay? Because I give you an example, like what we have here in Kuwait or the GCC in general, the tariffs on water, and it's all subsidized. And people, they really misuse the water. So if you increase the price for it, people will know what is the value, and they will be able to actually save the water, and it will be used for multiple purposes beside this.
Thank you, Rashad. I'm afraid we only have time for one more person to jump in on this question. Catherine Roche or Hank, one of you who has the most urgent word to say, please add. Sorry.
If I add something, Hank?
Yeah, of course, Catherine, the floor is yours. Yeah, it's all about inclusion. So
So I think what you mentioned was very important in terms of crowding in private sector, technical and finance. But it's also important that you have got a strong regulatory sector and a strong governance sector, as was previously mentioned. So for me, as much as I appreciate the small projects, with the levels of poverty we have and the levels of lack of water security we have in our country, it's very, very important, especially in emerging markets, that you have a national program view of implementing water security. So adapting national water programs is really, really important in making a real impact or scaling up small projects to a national level.
Thank you very much.
I don't take time.
Thanks. We would like to ask you to close. I'll simply move down across the panel with just a one-sentence answer. As people who have devoted their life to bringing water to millions and millions of people, I want to ask you simply, what gives you hope? Rochi, what gives you hope in one sentence with this water?
I think what gives me hope is just the high level of awareness that water security has attracted in the last couple of years. As they say, never waste a good crisis, and I can see that. Thanks.
Thank you. Hank, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope is the moment you create a safe space where people can come together, you can really build not only trust, capacity, but also the most amazing solutions that can help water security. So investing in people really gives me hope. And in every place, every city, rural community around the world where we do this, we see amazing projects coming to bear that also are sustainable when it comes to finance.
Thank you. Kimberly, what gives you hope in this work?
Thanks, Philip. Yeah, so what gives me hope is just the passion, the creativity, and the ingenuity of people. And we can do this. And I'm really excited to have this conversation in this event. And thanks very much.
Thank you. Rashad, what, as president of the IWB, what gives you hope in this work?
Hope is for people and governments to listen, take things serious, and to implement. That's my hope.
Beautiful. Thank you. Joe, what gives you hope in this work?
Simple. Youth. I have seen younger people, young engineers inside our company, outside, all wanting to solve water. Let's support them and get out of their way. We have a bright future ahead of us.
Beautiful. Fadi, what gives you hope?
Well, Philip, I will say youth gave me hope, and the future generation give me hope to change and get aware about the importance of saving water, the importance of applying SDGs, the three of the SDGs, 2, 6, and 7, and the behavior that are changing due to the pressure that the youth is implementing actually on the environmental and ecosystem scene.
Thank you, Fadi. Catherine, in one sentence, what gives you hope?
I am particularly hopeful and encouraged by the focus and the shift into social capitalism, because I live in a world of investment bankers and corporates who now are seriously not only looking, but investing, building themselves up, structuring themselves towards impact lending, especially in this space. And regulators, the stock exchange, whether you're on Wall Street, London Stock Exchange, and the JSE are readying themselves. The JSE has just developed an accredited ESG system, which means that when you invest in these type of projects, your returns are so much more attractive. So that
Thank you
gives me
so
a lot of hope.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in your cars in Cape Town, in your living rooms around the world, please put your hands together to thank these amazing 7 leaders for joining us today. Thank you so much. Can you hear their applause circling the globe? And we now turn back to our host in Cape Town. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much to Philip and the panel. We started off, of course, for those of us who are in Cape Town, the sun out, beautiful. And as we watch the incredible sunset, what we are going to do, and I'm sure during the course of this event, you've seen the amazing drone footage, and we are going to show you a bit more of the incredible sunset of Cape Town for those of you who are joining us from other parts of the world virtually. Thank you very much to Philip again and the panel. And there's a couple of things that were said there that I must reflect on. Hank, speaking of the need for this collective ambition, we don't leave anyone behind. And at the core of this entire discussion, one of the things that I must admit I picked up on is a philosophy that we have in South Africa. For those of you who are not aware, it's called Ubuntu. I am because you are. And at the core of what we're talking about is that we cannot have water security, we cannot have access to water without us as a collective working together. So we are because I am, because you are.
When you step back, you'll see not just extraordinary times, but an extraordinary belief that we can overcome these times and together reshape our future. When you step back, you'll see it's time for a different kind of expertise, one that helps sustain businesses that can revitalize our economy. Because sometimes you need to step back to step into a more sustainable world. Partner with the bank that puts sustainability at its heart.
I want to take a moment and just acknowledge the people who have made this event possible. Of course, the W12 squad, but also those who have made sure that, especially for those who are joining us from other parts of the world, to see the beauty that is Cape Town, the drone footage that showed the setting as the sun is setting in our city. And one message that I know a number of officials in Cape Town have been asking for is the need for there to be an increase in tourism. And one person who I know has been driving that message is Tim Harris, who has a message for us. Tim Harris is the CEO of Westgrow, the tourism, trade and investment promotion agency for Cape Town and the Western Cape. Here's a voice or a message of support from Tim Harris.
Cape Town and the Western Cape is open for business, events, exports and travel. We welcome virtual visitors from across the globe, as well as attendees who are tuning in from their cars right here at the W12 Congress Drive-In. This province is no stranger to crisis. A few years ago, we faced the possibility of our taps running dry. However, through collaboration between communities, government and the private sector, we managed to emerge stronger and position our destination as a globally recognized water-resilient city. So here at the southern tip of Africa, we're not just a resilient destination, but also an emerging center of innovation on the continent. We are Africa's tech capital, the gateway to the continent, but also boasting a stable, resilient economic climate. And we're well on the way to establishing leadership in sectors of the future. So may we connect, learn, and be inspired by this upcoming conference agenda. And we look forward to welcoming those of you that are attending virtually in person one day soon.
And I would like to welcome Travis Loop, who's a moderator of our second panel. Travis is a communications director for the Water Environment Federation, a non-profit with about 35,000 members and hosts. He hosts the World on Water podcast. He's a former director for water communications at the United States Environmental Protection Agency. If you could please welcome Travis Loop together with his panel.
Hello, everyone in Cape Town and around the world watching. It's very exciting to be here. Welcome to a discussion and screening of the incredible documentary Brave Blue World. This is really a breakthrough and a milestone for the water sector. There's a saying that those who tell stories rule the world. That is because stories have such a powerful influence on people's behavior and beliefs. We are fortunate to be joined today by a few of the storytellers from Brave Blue World. These three water experts who appear in the film will share their experiences and perspectives to help us understand the purpose of the project and how we can all use it to push to a sustainable water future. I'm very pleased to introduce them now. Paul O'Callaghan is the CEO of Blue Tech Research and executive producer of Brave Blue World. While working as an engineering consultant, he observed the prolonged length of time it took to bring water technologies to the marketplace. So he founded Blue Tech Research in 2011 to support innovation. Paul launched the effort to produce Brave Blue World to increase awareness of existing solutions to the water crisis. He regularly lectures and has spoken at Davos 2020, Web Summit 2020, and at Harvard and Cambridge universities. Paul now advises many Global 500 corporates, including L'Oreal, Microsoft, and PepsiCo on their water strategy policies, and is currently completing a PhD in water innovation. Paul, it's great to see you.
Good to see you. Good to be here.
We have Kimberly Kopicki, who is the global leader for sustainability, advocacy, and communications for DuPont Water Solutions. In this role, she is responsible for all business communications, developing and implementing sustainability programs and advocacy programs to drive business growth. She is also responsible for developing and achieving sustainability goals for DuPont Water Solutions. Prior to joining Dow in 2012, Kimberly served as vice president and group leader for the clean technology public relations practice at Edelman, the largest independent global public relations consulting firm. Kimberly, it's wonderful to have you.
Great to be here. Thanks so much, Travis.
And we also have Tom Kunitz, a past president of the Water Environment Federation. He recently served as assistant director of monitoring and research of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago, where he led the utility's efforts on resource recovery and innovation. Tom also serves on the Water Research Foundation Board of Directors. Tom is the recipient of the Charles Walter Nichols Award for Environmental Excellence from the American Public Works Association and is a WEF Fellow. Tom, it's terrific to have you here.
Hi, thanks, Travis. Happy to be here.
Great. Well, now we are going to dive into discussion, and I'm really excited to hear from you all. I'm hoping, Paul, that you could lead us off as the executive producer of Brave Blue World. Congratulations on this film coming to reality, on it launching on Netflix yesterday. This is incredible. Could you tell us and the audience a little bit about the story of Brave Blue World and why this project is so important?
Sure, happy to. So look, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to present and share this story with W12 in Cape Town. So we're humbled. The origins really go back to the fact that an awful lot of what people hear about water, if they hear anything about water, is very doom and gloom, apocalyptic tales of droughts and floods and water wars. And yet there's a counterpoint to that I see in my career through my work at Blue Tech Research. As I look globally at solutions, I see tremendous reasons to be optimistic and excited because we have incredible technologies. It's simply a matter of, to quote Kimberly in the film, to bring them to bear on the problem. And when I thought about where I could see this working in certain parts of the world, there was a common thing seemed to emerge. It was that certain parts of the world, people really connected with this. I would think of places like Singapore, Israel, the Netherlands, and that led me to believe that there's an alternative story that you can tell. And to your point, Travis, about the power of storytelling, if we can use this to communicate with people and bring policy, finance, technology together that was where the medium for the documentary came about. And we were very fortunate that a number of groups came on board and supported that project and believed in the mission of the project, including the Water Environment Federation, DuPont, who are here with us today, Xylem, Suez, L'Oreal, Aqualia in Spain, the Netherlands Water Partnership, and it became like a snowball. And you know you're doing something that there's a collective will to, and this momentum began to build. And suddenly we found Matt Damon was getting involved with the film, and Jaden Smith, and then Liam Neeson narrated it. So it's been incredible, and this is really the start of another part of the journey, is now to share the stories with people, and very fitting that we're doing it in Cape Town, because this is an incredible example of a company or a city that came to prominence because of the crisis. But now what's less talked about is that Cape Town is at 50% of water use, despite the fact that the reservoirs are full. That's that lasting change when people get involved, which is incredible.
Yeah, great information, Paul. So Paul mentioned, Kimberly, what a point you make in the film, and that's that there is incredible innovations and technologies out there. The film really highlights that. And I think the big challenge is how to get these more widely deployed, how we get them adopted out there. How do you think we can, that's a big question, a big challenge, but what are your thoughts on how we can try to move that process along?
Sure, thanks, Travis. I'll start the answer and love to hear others chime in. But you know, I think it starts kind of with groups like this, and I've noticed both in the chat group when I was watching the YouTube link, and also Paul, one of your events, the Blue Tech Research event, the Connections event. This community in water, I mean, even though we're from all over the world, it's like we're all so connected, and so I think, you know, this sharing is so important, knowledge sharing, right? So there's a lot of asymmetric information out there, especially when it comes to the solutions and technology, which was really one of the big reasons to get involved in this film, because I too was quite frustrated with the narrative. And when Paul came and said, "Oh, what do you think about this?" I think it was like a 5-page like PDF. I'm like, yeah, count us in. Because we too, all we do is, you know, we see solutions, we develop them, we deploy them, we see the magic that happens. But, you know, without that knowledge, you don't know. And also things like costs and how the costs have gone down for certain solutions, things like that. So, you know, we as DuPont, as a brand, we really focus a lot and we invest a lot in knowledge sharing. And provide open, free platforms for it. So that's a huge piece. I think the second one is that partnership piece. I mean, from the first panel, you might have noticed there's quite a diversity of perspectives, and you know, bringing in people coming in from the community leaders, finance, the technology folks, and again, the W12 is bringing these multi-stakeholders together. It's really what's going to make it work. And then the final thing I would say, and you're going to see this in the film, I'm excited for y'all to watch it, is this application development. So how can we take these, you know, maybe we have this global science, maybe we understand membrane science, but how do we apply it in all these different ways? Because the solutions have to be localized. So I'd say, you know, those 3 pieces are key, you know, the knowledge, the partnerships, and application development.
Paul, as someone who traveled the world putting this film together, what are your thoughts on how we can get the innovations and the technologies, you know, to be more commonplace, to get them out there?
Well, I'll draw upon a quotation from a science fiction writer, William Gibson. He is quoted as saying, "The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed." And I think that was a key message from the film. If you look at the fringes on the margins, that's where the innovation is really happening. And you may find that the solution is out there. And if, to Kimberly's point, if you can share that information among your peers, that creates that community effect, and we can quite likely fast track and accelerate just by simply being aware of who's tried this already.
Sure. Tom, you worked many years in Chicago at the Water Reclamation District. And I'm curious of your thoughts on getting the local support that's necessary to take risks, to put innovations and technologies in place. It's already been mentioned about how water is so local, and you have to get that support, especially from your time in Chicago and then your time with the Water Environment Federation, where you've spent so much time out there with people and states and cities and communities. What's the key here to getting that local support?
Well, we can start with what Paul was talking about, and that is telling a good story, because people like to rally around a good story. And one of those good stories people like to hear about is taking a problem and finding an opportunity. I'd say that this is a mess, but hey, we have an opportunity here to do something. Just an example of how we did this in Chicago was, if you think about sewage coming into a sewage plant, there's a lot of pollutants, and it is smelly, and it's not something that most people want to deal with. And at the treatment plant, we decided we're going to change the way that we look at things. We're no longer going to be thinking this as a waste that we want to find some way to get rid of, sweep under the carpet. But what if we looked at it in a positive and turned a problem into an opportunity and say, these are resources that we can reuse and put back into the economy. It's similar to the concept of, like, if you go to a home center and returning, there's the return bin where all the items people don't want. Well, somebody has to go to that bin and sort it out and put the hammers where the hammers and the nails back here and sort it all out. And these things are resold. So that's essentially what we're doing with the wastewater, looking for resources. You're going to see this in the film, how in Chicago, we take the phosphorus and nitrogen that come from people's urine and turn it into a fertilizer that is put on agriculture crops. And to take the organic material that's from our bowels, compost it, and use it to reclaim land. The methane gas that came off of the process is captured, and that is burned to make energy and make steam to heat the plant. The water itself is a resource. In parts of our country, it's being reused 3 or 4 times before it's put into a waterway, used for industrial purposes, used for agriculture, and so on. So that's a fantastic story that the people locally can rally around and say, hey, I was helping creating a problem, but now I can be part of the solution. And so you need to educate those local decision makers on what these technologies are. And then the final part of that is the creativity, bringing together a collaborative approach so we can have creative solutions by having a multiplicity of minds on the problem.
Thank you, Tom. Tom is at a public utility. Kimberly, as someone who's at a private corporation who's focused on water solutions, what's your perspective on getting that local support? Might be muted.
Thank you. First time I did that today, so it's bad. I think, like, it's not too dissimilar, Tom, from your story. You know, it is working with our customers, and many of our customers are municipalities in cities. So we do work with a lot of cities and, you know, water and wastewater treatment, you know, large and small. So we're pretty familiar with that. I think the huge opportunity, and Tom, your story is a great example of that, is that rethinking about waste streams differently. And, you know, water's already in a circular, you know, it already circulates, right? It's already circular. But what we're describing is, how do we tighten those loops and use our ingenuity and engineering to take those streams and separate them into, you know, water, energy, and materials. So, you know, the municipality has the opportunity, industry also has that opportunity, and Paul, you know this very well. And it's all, and also, you know, it's not an or question, it's really an and. So it's not like economic viability, you know, or sustainability. There's ways to make that and work. And it's in that sort of, I guess, a Venn diagram situation where you sort of find those solutions that, you know, provide the societal benefits, the economic benefits, the ecological benefits together, all as an integrated solution. So you know, that's our sweet spot. That's where we like to work, because it does require some advanced science. It doesn't have to be, you know, like the highest cost, but that's where technology and innovation are one of the key components to that.
Keeping on this theme of solutions being local, even let's look at the W12 cities. These are all very different cities. How do we realize that there's different solutions for different cities, but still there's common lessons that everybody can kind of take when it comes to building this sustainable future? It's kind of a tricky balance there. Kimberly, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I continue, and then others can please chime in. So, I mean, you're right. There's so many unique aspects to cities all over the world, but there are some commonalities, like that whole community education. That's going to be the same everywhere. Maybe the messaging or the content is a little different because of the locality, but there has to be some more, community education, community engagement. So that's a great area for knowledge sharing. And I'd say wherever you have people, you're going to have waste of some sort, or wastewater. And it may show up in different types of ways. Not everything's going to be a centralized piped situation. So those are two. And, the cool thing about cities is they're not like, they like to share knowledge. They want to share what they know. And I think that's a great thing. I think we just need to facilitate that more. And, I look at one of our customers in Orange County, water district, and you'll see this story in the film, and how they've really taken resource water and created this resilience and this ability to keep their aquifers healthy, and kind of reduce their risk to long droughts and heavy rains and such. And they have people all over the world come and tour their plant all the time, and they are willing and able and want to do that. So I think there's that sharing that's really great. And then the other piece, and what the W12 is doing, and the W12 Plus, is they're sort of looking at almost like a sister city situation, where there are cities that do have similar, sort of climate profiles and economic profiles. And how do we marry those pairs or twos or threes together, and they can share information? So, you don't have this sort of generic, almost less useful sharing, but you have still sharing among cities, but there's cities that have enough commonality that they can really make some progress.
Yeah, Tom, I wanted to get your thoughts on this question, as, again, someone who with your time with the Water Environment Federation has traveled around a lot and seen a lot of different cities and utilities. What do you think about how, you might need different solutions, but there might be some commonality to how you move forward?
One of the commonalities that is very successful, regardless of where you are, is if you can find solutions that have multiple outcomes, multiple benefits. And I've seen this as I've traveled across the country and other parts of the world. I could give you another brief example from Chicago, but to talk about what I'm talking about, we have urban schools, in an urban setting in the city, and these schools are surrounded by asphalt parking lots. And we have localized flooding whenever it rains because of the impervious surface. So 3 government organizations got together, are going into these schools, tearing out the asphalt and putting in place a playground that is made out of grass and gardens, bioswales, and pervious play surfaces. So what we have now, the solution has driven multiple outcomes. We reduce localized flooding. We have less water that's going into the sewers and the sewage treatment plant. We have now a place for children to play where before they didn't. We have the teachers have outdoor education opportunities. The community now has a place to come and exercise, run around the track, whatever, when school is out. You're increasing the health of the children, increasing the health of the community. All of these were multiple outcomes where the solution could have simply gone in there and put in a retention basin and we'd be done. That would have solved the problem. But by going in and finding multiple outcomes, you're going to get better support for whatever your solutions are.
Paul, you have, again, as part of making this film, been around the world. You've stood in the countryside in Kenya, and you've stood, in incredible advanced water treatment facilities in Singapore and all over the place. I'm curious your thoughts on what the developed world can learn about water resource management from the developing world.
Well, I can say personally, I learned an awful lot from that, being involved in the film, and I've been in water for 20 years, but I don't think I fully appreciated the difference it made to people's lives to have access to clean water or sanitation until I was in, Nathare in Nairobi, and could see the difference it made to children's lives, or at the children's home in Kenya where they're capturing water from air. So we have tremendous things we can learn about the value of water and the value of sanitation that we take for granted. But the solutions that we see applying, oftentimes there's a lot more parallels than we might think. Jaden Smith, in the film speaks about how his first goal was he wanted to take water filters and bring them to places like Africa or Asia and use them. But then he realized there were problems much closer to home in Flint, Michigan. So he started there, but the filters they're applying in Flint, Michigan could equally well be deployed in other scenarios in the developing world. I think about urine source separation, the work of people like Nancy Love, where she's doing fantastic work in Addis in Ethiopia, and the exact same type of solutions are being deployed in Michigan. So those are the parallels. And it's this idea, if we started with a blank sheet of paper, what would we do? And how would we reinvent it? And that's where the developing world really has an advantage, in that it is starting in many cases without being the infrastructure that we have grown up with. So I think those are the opportunities that I see for the exchange.
As we move into a brave blue world, as we have this explosion of innovation and technology, Tom, I want to hear from you about what we think we need to do about the water workforce to make this all possible.
Yeah, I want to talk about one word: diversity. It's all about the diversity. We need a diversity of perspective. We need diversity of experience. We need diversity of thought. I mean, it's ridiculous to think that a small group of like-minded people, maybe of the same gender, same race, same education background, same social structure, is going to have the solutions for all of the people in the community. That's why you have to have people who are part of the solution coming from all parts of the community to offer their perspective. And the diversity also goes into the skill set that we need for this. The traditional environmental engineers and civil engineers, of course, we're going to need that for the water workforce of the future, but also city planners, people like Hank Oving from Holland, who was on an earlier panel, talking about going in and planning of what we're going to do, thoughtfully planning. You're also going to need people with finances to fund these things, skills that are on the ground skills, trades, electricians, carpenters, pipe fitters, operators, things that cannot be outsourced. These are really good jobs. Going into the future, whole new types of careers that don't even exist right now that young people are going to be hoping to step into as the world digitizes. We need data analytics. We're going to need people doing machine learning, artificial intelligence. And finally, and I don't want to leave this one out, and we also need people who can advocate for nature, because that is part of the diversity as well. And a great example of that is right here in South Africa, Dr. Jackie King from University of Cape Town, who just last year won the Stockholm Water Prize. And I was very fortunate to get a chance to meet and chat with her. And she won the Water Prize for her work in South Africa, advocating for the rights of rivers to exist, right? We also have to advocate that part of the diversity is our natural areas must exist as well. So I see that as the workforce of the future for water. It's all about diversity.
Right. Paul, you track technology and the trends very closely, especially through Blue Tech research. Your thoughts on where the water workforce needs to go to be able to make the brave blue world a reality?
I would have to pick up on some of what Tom just said there. It's diversity, and it's the fact that we're technologists and scientists, at least I am, and we believe that we've got tremendously exciting things that we can bring to bear. But you need policy, you need finance, you need governance structures, regulations that allow you. So there's a multidisciplinary nature to that, where we need so many different disciplines and ways of thinking, including communication. And that, I think, is critical if you really want to make a difference.
Sure. So we definitely need to get the younger generation interested in water and interested in water careers and coming into this area. Kimberly, what do you think we can do to get those younger people informed on water and interested and active?
I mean, I think a big thing you can do is find an icon like Jaden Smith, as Paul, you mentioned, and get him to be part of a documentary and have that somehow be available ubiquitously, say on Netflix. I think something like that could happen. Anything can happen. So I think just, yeah, getting people knowledgeable and excited about it and doing it in a way that's not like a snore fest. I'm sorry, but like, let's make it interesting. And, you know, what makes it interesting is the people. And when you watch this film, you're going to see it's a story about people, and their ingenuity and their caring and their passion and compassion. So I think the film itself is a huge step forward, but it's also an example of, you know, how we can engage and get people excited about it. And I think there too is just the overall STEM efforts, you know, getting people, young people, especially girls, into, you know, these STEM career pathways, whether it ends up in water or not. But we need that. We need engineers, scientists. We need all the disciplines, but we need to move forward in innovation.
Yeah, I know that you were sharing a story of showing this film to your young ones, and I've done the same thing. And so, like you said, this film is a great way to try to get that younger generation interested. I think Liam Neeson had the quote that every college and every school needs to see this film, so they realize how important water is and the opportunities there are to deal with it. I want to ask Paul, put this question just to you about the younger generation, what your thoughts are.
Well, I'm reminded of when we began shooting, we went to Singapore, we went to the new water treatment plant. And as we were there filming, there was a tour going through the plant of young children. They couldn't have been more than 8, 9, 10 years of age. And they were being brought on a tour of it's a new water treatment plant, a water recycling plant. And I was thinking, wow. And they made it so cool. I mean, it's like going to Disney World for water, you know, or something like this. And they made it really fun and really engaging. So the kids were enthusiastic, and they had these beautiful bottles, you know, like I said, new water, and the kids wanted the bottles. They were cool. And I think, to me, that drove home, you have to start early if you want. And they've been working on this for decades in Singapore. I mean, you can see billboards in the 1980s on the side of walls there, murals that the city put up there to bring water messages home to people. So start early, because that's where you're going to have the greatest impact.
Yeah. In the beginning of this conversation, you know, Paul made the point that most of the water news we hear is gloom and doom, and it's about the problems and the challenges, and that can be pretty defeating. How do we stay optimistic in the face of all these enormous challenges and kind of the parade of negative news? I'm curious, Tom, what your thoughts are, how we keep a smile on our face.
Well, Travis, that's a very important question. And I've said this before, but I'm going to say this again. In every crisis, there's an opportunity. So if we take our mindset away from this is a problem and into we have an opportunity here, it actually takes our brain into a place from a negative into a positive, and it puts our brain and our whole being into a place of positivity and optimism. Now, this is going to sound a little bit cynical here, but follow me. I don't think that the salvation here and our solutions are going to be entirely coming from the public sector and governments. They do a really good part, but I don't think it's going to come entirely from there. And I don't think it's going to come entirely from the private sector. Where I think that what's really going to drive it from is a third sector, which is called the plural sector. And the plural sector is made up of the independents. You have your academic institutions and NGOs and clubs and organizations, even just average citizens. Great cultural upheavals in the history of the world have often come from this plural sector, who drive then the changes that happen in government and changes that follow through in the private sector. And what gives me hope is I look at the people and all the cars that are in this drive-in, the people that have showed up. Or we think about all the people in the world that couldn't make it into Paul's film, that were out there doing great stuff. Paul would have to do 3, 4, 5 other films just to capture all of that. Or see somebody, a young person like Greta, who speaks up and holds her convictions. That gives me hope. Or I look at my own little nieces. We're going in for a walk and they bend down and pick up a little frog and they're absorbed in the wonder of this little piece of nature. That's what gives me the optimism that's going to be coming from the plural sector, and that we're recognizing that piece by piece, this is our home and it's the only home that we have. We can't eradicate it. We're going to have to be living in harmony with it.
You just made me feel more optimistic, Tom, so thank you. Kimberly,
Right.
You know, you have a moment in the film here where, you know, you talk about the challenge of getting the innovation out there, the technology out there, and it's it feels a little tough for you, that it, breaks your heart, is what you say, that it can't all be out there quickly. But so how have you worked through that and become, feeling optimistic about water, and how can everybody else kind of go in that same path?
Sure. Well, hours of therapy. Second, I would say, one thing this pandemic has shown us is our ability to rapidly change, right? So in our capacity for rapid change. So I think, it gives me hope in a sense of like watching kind of how we are as a world experiencing something at the same time. I mean, it's such a tragedy, but what an opportunity to kind of figure out new ways to do this. We're experiencing this live now, such a different way to bring people together and not give up, just say, let's not even get us together. It's like, you know what, we need to do this to move forward. How do we do it? And thinking through and how we change and creating new models and creating that brain plasticity, but like doing it on a global level. That's what excites me. It's maybe broader than water, but I think, if we can do that, we can figure out water as well.
Great. Kind of the last question here. Paul, you're the executive producer of the film. You need to give us all directions now. Everybody sitting there in Cape Town, everybody watching around the world. How should this film be used? What should all of us that see this film then go and do?
Well, yeah, I was happy to be a conduit to help bring some of the stories to bear, but indeed there are many, many more. And we want to democratize this. And I love that term plurality, it's the many. And I think there's a grassroots opportunity that is mentioned, that you build a movement. And I was listening before we went live to the set from Jeremy Loops and that song Dreaming Again about the revolution in my head. And I was thinking that's very much in keeping with what we're trying to do here, is to keep people dreaming about change and that grassroots revolution. And there are many things that go hand in hand with that. You get more people to see these messages and absorb them and think differently. Demand more of your utilities because it's there. It is possible. So just ask for it, expect it, and be open to it when things are proposed. If you're engaging with your brands, know that some brands are showing exceptional leadership in water stewardship. Recognize that and encourage others to do more. We can certainly engage with local government, national government, through social media, policy, and that's what the younger generation are fantastic at doing. And all those things collectively, but it is collectively.
Sure. Well, Paul and Kimberly and Tom, thank you so much for all your perspective. It was wonderful to talk to you. I'm excited for everyone to. Before we kick to the film, I just want to share a special toast. This is actually a bottle from Orange County Water District of recycled, reclaimed sewage here. This is the water that they make, and you'll see it in the film. So just a cheers to Paul, to these other storytellers, to everyone that's here today, and to a brave blue world.
Thanks very much.
Enjoy the film.
Enjoy.
Thanks, Jeff.
Enjoy, everyone. Thank you.
The Kasarani community and the Little Sisters project was one of huge interest to the company. The Little Sisters run a hospital and school facility in the Kasarani area. And the issue at the time was high fluoride concentration in their raw water sources. It causes dental and skeletal fluorosis in people. Over about 30 million Kenyan people are living with this condition.
Initially, the local community used to get their water from the city supply. Unfortunately, due to distance and numerous breakages, the water gets contaminated on the way. Many people, members of the community, usually complain on waterborne diseases or water-related illnesses.
We were not sure of the safety of this water, and they come and sell to us at high cost.
When there's not enough sufficient water in the hospital, then almost all procedures and all the running up of a hospital every day comes to a standstill. We have a big population. If you combine the patients in the outpatient, we have about 400 patients in a day that will need water in one way or another.
The Little Sisters of St. Francis manage 3 schools in this complex. This majorly has resulted to a high cost
for us in the expenditure, and we have been having this challenge.
We were first approached by the Little Sisters organization to consider ways to support their ability to address fluoride problems that they were experiencing with their borehole in the hospital and larger facility at their compound. So this kind of collaboration between us allowed us to provide the financial resources that were necessary in order to expand the water services that Little Sisters can provide.
In partnership with DuPont Water Solutions and USAID, we're able to put together a solution to deploy a defluoridization unit on site, and this was able to reduce the fluoride levels to acceptable global recommendation standards.
DuPont has a solution or has a product that uses low energy but produces similar results or similar quality. So fluoride removal can be achieved by using such a technology.
With the nanofiltration membrane, you're able to selectively remove fluoride molecules from the water, allowing you to run treatment systems at higher levels of recovery. So you're able to achieve much more in terms of developing much simpler systems to remove fluoride from drinking water.
We were targeting majorly the fluoride, the high fluoride levels in the water, which was up to 14 ppm. So we wanted to reduce this to levels that are acceptable for drinking, that is below 1.5 ppm. And if you look at the nanofilter is a best filter to target the fluorides. At the same time, it consumes much less energy. It gives a very good return on investment whenever you use these products. So they are the best in the market and they are the best in terms of efficiency.
This project has become a blessing to the community around us. It has assured us for a very clean, filtered water, a water that we are not supposed even to boil.
Our water basically now is fluoride free. We are able to enjoy the water here as a community and even in the community which is living around us.
This very safe water has not only saved a lot of cost in the hospital, but also has brought a wonderful solution to our community who would spend about $4 to $5 to purchase the 20-liter drinking water from the supermarket. Now they can use as less as $0.4 to get very safe, sweet and tasty water.
With an assurance of the nanofiltration we have at St. Francis, at the Little Sisters Water Project, we feel that the people appreciate getting their water from here.
I came to fetch water all the way from a place called Maternity. This place, I know it has the water consumed here. It's clean for consumption.
We are very happy because these waterborne diseases have decreased considerably, especially with the children, diarrhea, typhoid and amoebas.
The greatest lesson learned for us is that partnerships work. Partnerships are important. Working together to develop solutions, I think, is critical.
With guys like the USAID, with the Davis and Shetliff, or the St. Francis Hospital, have enabled us to put funds together to bring about projects that can positively impact communities.
We partnered with the technology providers, the people with the need, the company that was able to provide infrastructure, and together with that we've been able to impact 6,000 lives just with this little project.
They are sharing this story not only in this community, but you find even in far distant communities, they are getting to know about this water, and they want to tell this story to anyone who can benefit from this safe and very, very affordable drinking water.
I'm confident that nanotechnology will become probably the solution of choice to address fluoride removal in this region. Without water, no economic activities can go on, not just in Kenya, but across the world. Water is what sustains life. So being able to come up with solutions that make water available to Kenyans, to East Africans, is very fulfilling.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how we conclude this inspiring, thought-provoking session. Thank you to all of you for being here, for those who have joined us via your cars in Cape Town and those joining us virtually. Thank you very much to our panelists, our special guests, the performances that we've had, at the end of it all, with all that we have heard, all that we have listened to, the message really is about collaboration, it's about hope, and it's about the opportunity that we have moving forward. I hope you have been as inspired as I have been, and hopefully we are able to, in moving forward, join the W12 Plus movement in all the work that they do. If you'd like to get involved, make sure that you access the W12 Plus team via social media. Again, thank you very much. My name is Kokezo Sachane. Good evening. Thank you to all of you.